Hello and welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token podcast. This is episode 107. My name is Chris.
I'm Euan.
I'm David.
I'm Pawel.
That's a pretty good Pawel impression.
I didn't think I had it.
You just pulled out of the bag there. That's pretty good. Pawel's not here.
I just wanted for a moment to provide the illusion for all the Pawel fans out there.
Are there any theories on where Pawel is?
He made some weird comment about throwing. I'll clean it up for radio. Turds in various directions, and I just took him at his word. To be honest, I don't think it was a metaphor. I think he is standing in a roundabout somewhere, just throwing excrement at cars.
He's not very good at metaphors, so you're probably right.
Nah,
well,
see, yeah, he's a very literal-minded guy.
Finally, his work has broken him. That's all we're going to say.
He's just snapped.
So, no Pawel this week, but we are going to do a board games episode, so which means that Pawel is not going to have a chance to talk about RPGs. We've made a space for him. We've made a space for RPG chat. Every time we make a space, he doesn't turn up.
There's always a space for him to talk about RPGs.
There's always a space for Pawel. But no, what we're actually going to talk about is the fact that we went to the Tabletop Scotland ticket launch party last night. Yeah, last night as we are recording this, so Thursday night. So yeah, we went there. We got an invite to that, and we were there with various other people from podcasting and just some friends of the organisers and that kind of thing. Yeah. And it ended up just being a pretty relaxing, chilled out night of just playing some games.
It was good to get to know some of the other games media folk in Scotland
indeed.
And the folk that we've sort of the Tabletop Scotland crowd.
Mm-hmm. And we spent a good chunk of time playing games with Kenny from the Dice Roll Cafe in Glasgow.
Oh yeah,
what a good lad.
Big shout out to Kenny.
Big shout out to Kenny. Hey, big Kenny, there you go. So yes, Tabletop Scotland tickets are now on sale. So if you want to get tickets for that, you can go to their website, which is tabletopscotland.co.uk. Tabletop Scotland, all one word. That is on this Saturday the 24th and Sunday the 25th of August. It's at the Dure Centre in Perth, so it's right in the middle of Scotland, so you've no excuse for not going. Which is basically why they put it there.
Yeah. That's a good point, yeah. It's a great location. Everyone can get to it.
It's perfect because, yeah, it is pretty central.
Huh.
So if you're a Scottish person who likes gaming, go on, get your tickets, get online, go and grab them. We will be there in some capacity. We may just be there to play some games. Who knows? Who knows?
Come up and shake our hands.
Yeah, come up and speak to us if you're there. But we'll remind you about it closer to the time. It's going to be twice as big as last year. Last year they had the main sort of hall in the place, which was big enough, and they had some various other rooms, but they've actually booked out the entire building this time, including the ice rink.
Yep.
But they're not using it for ice skating or anything. They're going to actually concrete the floor over.
Well, I'd be interested to see. I mean, when we went in there last night, the room that they'd been using for the last Tabletop Scotland event was being used for it was lawn bowls were going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's an impressive building. There's a lot going on. I mean, there was curling going on in there last night.
I've never seen such dedication to curling as well.
I've never seen that many people playing curling at once. There's a lot of folk.
Hey, it's got a big following. You don't hear about it because it's not sexy, like politics or sexy stuff.
I sent a video of people curling to my girlfriend last night. She's English, of course, so I just put hashtag Scottish things and sent that to her, just in case she didn't understand what was going on. There are also there's a couple of secrets that we were let in on last night, which we're not allowed to talk about, but we know there might be a couple of pretty cool things going on at Tabletop Scotland this year. So get your tickets. Just get your tickets and we'll see you there. So yeah, we're going to talk about some of the games that we played while we were there. We didn't play any meaty games. There was a few folk there. There was maybe about 30 people or something. Is that about the right estimate? 20 to 30 people?
Yeah.
Pretty intimate affair.
Yeah.
And there were some meaty games going on, but we just sort of ended up just getting involved in some of the sort of smaller things instead, while we were sort of chatting to other people. First up, we played Clask, which isn't really a board game, but it's a fun activity.
No, it is. It's taken the world by storm. It's some old Dutch approximation of table football, because you give them a magnet and they flatten it out and make some like silly game out of it. You get a little wooden little wooden table, and
Yeah.
you have to try and knock a ball about on it with some magnetised pieces.
It's interesting how it's played.
Yeah,
I mean, like those magnets must be pretty strong, because you're basically holding a magnet underneath a wooden table, which is moving a piece on top of it.
yeah.
So like that magnet has to be that's got to have some strength in it. So don't put it near your TV if you've got this game.
I wouldn't. Yeah,
I wouldn't do
away
that.
from there.
I did that once to my dad's TV when I was younger. About
Yeah.
about shit myself, by the way.
Oh yeah, look at the pretty colours.
Thankfully, it sorted itself out, so I don't think it was that strong a magnet. Kids, if you're listening, don't do that. So yeah, it's just a game with a couple of pegs that you're controlling with a magnet. There's a ball. Each player has a sort of hole in the middle at their end of the table. That's a little hole, and that's where you've got to try and get the ball into. The problem with this being that you can move the piece into your own hole, and if you do that, you automatically lose a point. And I did it twice, I think, in the game that I played. I got grannied. I got beat 6-0. I was bad at this game.
We all struggle at it.
Yeah. There was some chat about how one side was playing uphill though, because the table was.
There did seem to be somebody got a bit technical, described it as a camber. On the table.
Oh, a camber. Oh, good word.
I heard the word camber used, and I got a little bit aroused.
So you're basically just trying to knock this ball around into the hole, but there's also 3 other little magnetic pieces in the centre of the board, and you can ping them at your opponent. And if you get too many of those on your peg, you lose a point.
Yeah.
So there's more than just the ball going about. You've got to take into account these little white pieces. It's fun.
Yeah.
That's all I can really say. It's fun. Apparently the person that got this had picked it up for about 20 quid. I had a look on, well, just Amazon to be honest, and I think they're going for about 70 to 80, so I don't know what the actual price of these boards is, because some of these Amazon sellers are just a joke.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's not, you look at it, I mean, if you've ever seen a class board, it's not a high-tech piece of kit.
Oh god, no.
I imagine there's probably a few folk, because I've noticed there is a bit of a craze for it. It started popping up in a few pubs and things like that, having one in there. So it's it's one of those things where probably be a few folk taking advantage and selling it for probably over the odds. But it is basically, I mean, the thing's just made out of wood and just cheap kind of like plywood stuff. It's not an expensive piece of kit.
Yeah. I'm sure there's probably people out there that have blinged some bits up and made their own fancy boards.
Oh, I'm sure you can.
The one that you'll buy in the shops is just it's not an expensive piece of kit, but it doesn't have to be. It's functional, because it's more about the game rather than how it looks. But yeah, it was fun. I think me and you had to go at this, Euan, and we just got hammered, didn't we? We were not very good. I mean, I thought that you would be good at this because you have a history of table football.
It's a very different game to table football. I mean, I stand by my table football credentials, but this is
You're not allowing this to bring your.
This is a completely different skill set.
I'm wrecking your reputation, Euan.
Oh yeah, no, I will not have my table football reputation besmirched.
So yes, that's Clask. Have a look out for it. It's good fun. I'm actually thinking about bringing this into my work if I can get a copy of it. Bringing it in to sell arguments. Just like, right, that's it, Clask.
That is it. Well, it plays quite quickly because, I mean, just because of the amount of ways that you can lose.
Yeah.
And it's more of a losing game than a winning game. That's what I found.
I think you're right. I think you're. It's quite easy to make yourself lose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which I found.
It was quite tense.
Oh, it is very tense.
Tense matchups.
Well, because there's when you get down to it, there's a kind of limited range that you can move your piece about in.
Yeah.
Because you've got to avoid that hole, so you don't want to be going straight across anywhere where that is, and you don't want to be getting too close to the central magnets and having them stick to you. So you've got to be quite careful what you're doing.
It reminded me of the James Bond film A View to a Kill. When I don't know if you.
Well, everybody always wants to be reminded of A View to a Kill.
I don't know if you recall. I think it's A View to a Kill where they play the game with, is it Max Sorin, and they play the game where they have to hold on to the 2 joysticks, and there's like nuclear missiles flying about on the screen in between them, and you get electric shocks. Anyway,
I've never seen it.
No,
I'll take your
I don't
word for
recall
this,
that
Dave.
bit.
You could be making this up.
I think I was so mesmerised by the butterfly dance in that
people
film.
will know what I'm talking about.
I'd need to go back and have a look. I mean, if it is A View to a Kill, then it really just adds to the quality of that film anyway. So
Yeah, that may be the wrong film, but it's definitely in one of them.
Alright, cool. Well, that's class. That came out in 2014. I'm sure this is based on a much older game.
No, I'm sure it's what it's like been knocking around for ages.
Aye.
It feels like the sort of thing somebody built in their garage many decades ago.
See, there's something I'm thinking of, and I don't know if it is this game, but I'm pretty sure that there are massive tournaments that go on. I think it might just be something very similar to this, and that might be what that game's based on, but the name of it is totally escaping me. I read about it in a book of games.
This does sound like the sort of thing that would go on in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
They just, like, they're really into Stratego. Like nobody else is.
Only the Scandinavians care about Stratego.
It's true. It's like still massive there, and they have the World Championships or whatever are held there every year, and a game that everyone else has long since given up on.
Well, I mean, this environment shapes characters in different ways, so it's...
If we have some Scandinavian listeners out there that want to defend Stratego, then please write in and tell Dave what you think.
I like,
and if you can remember...
Oh, don't back up now, Dave.
I have a copy of it.
He's worried about the Scandinavian backlash.
Anyway, right, yes, Clask, 2014. The designer here is listed as Mikael Bertelsen. Okay, after that we moved to another table sideways. We kind of got just dragged into a game called Evil Overlord.
Yeah.
Which apparently plays way much better with more people. And I can see why. Evil Overlord is just a card game, and we were told a story. Whether this is true or not, this might just be urban myth. But whether this is true or not, I don't know. But apparently this game was designed because the designers were fed up of waiting for their friends to take their turns during games, so they designed this game to play in between. Well, they were waiting for somebody to take their turn, because it plays really quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
It sounds plausible.
It does sound plausible. And definitely if you get people to play this game that take ages taking their turns, then they might teach them a lesson. But Evil Overlord is a pretty simple card game where there is a massive deck of cards. I mean, I didn't get the actual card count on it, but it was quite a big deck, wasn't it?
It's a big, like, sort of pack when you get it with the cards. Yeah. Bigger pack of cards than I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's like four decks worth.
Yeah, something like
so,
that.
At least.
Is a deck's worth, is that a unit of cards?
Yeah.
Yep.
You're 52.
Classic 52. So yeah, the big deck of cards. These cards just have they have a colour on them. That's the most important bit, really. And just some sort of monster. It can range from robots to vampire style monsters, elves and goblins, and all these kind of things. But the colours are what's important. So what happens is that everybody gets dealt, I think, 7 cards from this big deck, and as soon as everybody's got their 7 cards, everybody picks up their cards at once and looks at them, and then you have to start trading with each other as fast as you possibly can. And really all you're doing is just shouting out a number of cards that you want to trade. So you'd be like, 2, and if somebody else is saying 2, you can just go, right, okay, just swap them. And the idea being that you've got to try and get as many of the same colour of cards as you possibly can. Okay? And you can stop at any time that you want. So you can just say, I'm done. And there is an advantage to doing that. I didn't actually quite pick up what that advantage was. Can anybody remember?
I can't remember. It might be that you go first in the resolution of...
Yeah. Sorry, you're right. The turn order starts with you if you finish first. That's what happens.
It was the usual kind of just turn order advantage, I think.
You're right. That is exactly what happens. So, but the thing about this whole trading thing, because the game's kind of like 2 stages. The first part's the trading, the second bit's actually where you start fighting each other. And during the trading thing, you can just say 2 and throw 2 cards on the table, and if somebody else has agreed to trade with you for 2 cards, but if somebody else has 2 cards that they want to get rid of, they can just jump into that trade and just take the cards that are sitting on the table instead.
It's
that whole
utterly
bit was just mental.
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah. It's just like, I'm trading with you, and Dave just goes, I'll take those, and just takes them out of your hand, basically. Just like, it's okay, well, that trade's not happening anymore.
It happened several times during that game. You were passing cards across the table, and just a hand would come out, no, I'm having them. And then you're stuck with 2 other random cards. I mean, you'll always end up with something with the trade.
Yeah, you always have to have 7 cards essentially. So
Yeah.
so like people just can't go like if you're trying to trade 2 cards, they can't give you 1 in exchange.
It has to be.
They have to give you 2, even
for
if
2,
they're,
3
even
for
if
3,
they're
whatever.
stealing the trade.
Yeah.
It still has to be equal trades.
I mean, you can do all 7 if you want. I think if someone
you
wants
can
to trade
just
7
throw all your hand in if you like. But when you get down to it, once everybody's kind of done, because you do get to a point where you're like the same 2 or 3 cards are just being passed across the table constantly, so you're just kind of like, well, that is done now. You lay your cards face up on the table. You have to throw away. You have to pick a colour essentially. So 1 colour from your hand. So say you've got purple. You say, right, I'm using the purple cards, and you have to throw away the others. So you can only use all the cards of 1 colour, and then you have a fight. And the cards are all ranked. They start off at 9s and they go down to 1s. So you go around the table, whoever's got 9s, some of these cards have special abilities on them. So anybody that's got a 9 that's got a special ability gets to use it. And some of these abilities will just do things like kill a monster, get rid of a random monster from somebody's hand. They might, like I had one when I went to robots where you could combine 2 robots together and then you double their power, which was really useful, that won me a round. Just stuff like basic stuff like that. None of it's overly complicated, which is nice. And then once you go around, you go 9s, 8s, 7s, 6s, straight down to 1s. Everybody uses their abilities, and then once all that's done, you count up the totals and the numbers that you have. Whoever has the highest total wins the round. And that's it. That's the game. And you can just play however many rounds until the cards run out, basically. It's fun. It's one of these games that you're like, if you're looking for something deep, it's not this, but it's stupid, and it's really a filler game, and I can see like why this story is going about, that the designers made this to play while they were waiting for somebody to take their turn, because it does feel like that kind of game, because it plays in like, you play a round of it in 5 minutes. It's that quick and easy. What did you think of it?
I quite enjoyed it. Yeah, just as a daft wee game, and like you say, like just something that take the space in between some meatier games. It's quite fun, and it's, as I said, it's like amusingly cruel.
Yeah,
like even the sort of like the battle stage, like some of the abilities are just they're quite savage. They'll be like just remove get somebody else's monster and things like that. And it's so arbitrary and so kind of just like horrific that you can't argue with it.
Yeah.
Like anyone arguing with that game is wasting their time. It's fun and silly.
Dave, what did you think of this?
Yeah, I'd agree. It's just a thing you do.
Classic Dave review.
It fills in the hours until your inevitable death.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. It's like, quick game of Evil Overlord. Yeah, all right.
And there's but because there's no setup time or anything. You shuffle the deck and deal the cards out. So yeah, you're right, Dave. That is how this game's going to go down.
You just play it.
So yes, Evil Overlord, that came out only last year, 2018. I don't have a designer listed for this. I don't know why. There's no publisher. The publisher is Shades of Vengeance. And there's no artist or designer listed in Board Game Geek. So I do apologise that I don't have that information up.
Don't recall seeing it on there. I mean, one thing I did point out actually on the rules, because we played it with 8. It says 2 to 8. I can't imagine it'd be very good with 2 or 3.
The rules say 2 to 6.
Well, now, this is the thing I noticed. I can't remember which way it was, but I looked at the wee card, the insert that's got like the rules on it, and it says 2 to 6. And then on the side of the box it says 2 to 8, so there's been a misprint somewhere.
Well,
but
here's the interesting thing then, Euan. Here's the interesting thing. On Board Game Geek it's listed as 3 to 10.
This game's just taking the piss.
It's a game called Evil Overlord, what do you expect? You're right, Euan. Don't argue with this game.
No, don't argue.
It's just trying to confuse
you. It's going to do what it likes, and you just have to deal with it.
So yeah, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about Skull, or Skull and Roses as it I think used to be called. Yeah,
it was the box that we played. It was listed as like some kind of special edition, like Ultimate Edition or something like that. And it's a really quite simple, abstracted bluffing game. I think the theme's meant to be set around the idea of like settlers from or like clans from different kind of civilizations coming together. But I mean, it's totally irrelevant almost. But they have kind of themed each set of your sort of like tokens around that. So you have these these big round discs, basically. Every player's going to have a set of those discs. There'll be a uniform colour. They'll have each you get 4. You get a little player board to put them on. 3 of those discs will have a flower on one side, and 1 will have a skull. And essentially, all you're trying to do is pick up ones with flowers and not pick up ones with skulls.
Yes.
See, the more I think about it, this game is so easy to play, but it's quite difficult to explain.
Yeah, and Kenny from Dice Roll Cafe, he tried to explain this game to us. And it did take a little while for us to actually be like, right, okay, now I understand the game, sort of thing. Even though, yes, it is actually very simple to play. And probably, this is one of those games where the best way to learn how to play it is just to play it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think that's what we had to do. We basically played around and we're like, okay, right, I think
we
got
get it now.
The general gist. Because, yeah, essentially what you're doing, you go around the table, the first player will everybody's basically putting down one of their discs. Once it gets back to the first player, they have a choice to either put down another disc, or they can start bidding on how many discs they're going to turn over, and there'll be flowers on them. So you basically, you can start your bid at 2, 3, whatever, however. I mean, obviously you're not going to bid more than there are discs on the table. It wouldn't give any work.
That'd be silly.
But you're wagering essentially that you're going to turn those discs over and you're not going to hit a skull. If you then go around, whoever wins the bid goes ahead and flips the discs. They start with their own. So you're kind of
that's the main thing. You have to turn over your own first, all of them.
So you're kind of stacking it against yourself. You're obviously going to want to have your flowers down, not your own skull. Although there did seem to be a tactic involved in playing your skull and then basically causing yourself to lose.
Well, that's the thing, because that's the bluffing aspect of this. That's one of the bluffing aspects of the game, is that you put a skull down and you start a bidding process, or you get involved in a bidding process and hope that somebody else bids higher than you, because you're just trying to basically force them into turning over your skull.
Yeah. It's like a strangely elegant game, like how it kind of like there's a lot of like tactics you could kind of put into it, but essentially it's just that sort of that weird bluffing thing.
But and the bluffing's weird because it's not like you're sitting there. I mean, you can do. Well, we didn't. You could probably sit there and go, oh yeah, I've got a skull in here, by the way, or I've not got any skulls in my pile.
Yeah.
But nobody really did that when we played it. We're just kind of sitting, just sort of all eyeing each other up and just being like, I don't trust you.
Back.
Like,
Listen, it's kind of set up because it is so simple in terms of the variables in the game. Everybody's got 4 discs and that's it. And you actually, as you go on, so if you lose, if you do your bid and then you pick up. You turn over a disc and there's a skull on it, you've lost that bid.
Yeah.
So you're going to lose one of your discs.
Yeah.
But the odds are easy to comprehend for anyone. Even if some people are better than others at like kind of doing that in these kind of games. This one I think is quite even, where everyone can kind of see what's there, and you're not there's not too many variables to work with. So it kind of leaves you. Everybody can kind of like have a chance at.
You know what the bluffing in this game reminded me of, though? It's almost like the bluffing in poker. Like, it really feels like that, where you are just basically looking at somebody and eyeing up what they've got in their hand. Like, that's essentially what you're doing in this game, and trying to decide whether they, they're at it or not, basically.
Yeah.
Well, it's also very like a game called Perudo, or Doodle as well, it's called, which is a dice game, where everybody starts with 7 dice and you roll them under a cup, and you can look at the numbers. There are many names for this. It's a traditional game.
Yeah.
Perudo, I think, is a commercial name, but I believe it's a sort of older, more traditional game. And the bidding is kind of similar. It starts, and you'll start bidding on how many of a certain number you think there will be.
Yeah.
So you'll say, okay, I'm going to start at like 2 1s, because it has to go up the way. Bidding on the number of 2s is a higher bid than the number of 1s, but it goes round, and eventually, so it's a kind of push. It's a push.
I believe that we played this game in an underground Chinese pub
in Leeds. Yeah. We turned it into a drinking game.
We did.
So it's kind of similar because you can see what's in your hand. So it's similar in the sense that you know what you've put down in skull. So there's a similar kind of thing. Is like you can see that if you've rolled like a bunch of 6s or 5s or whatever, then you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah.
But then people start thinking like, well, they start like trying to guess what you have, and it's a kind of similar thing. It's the skull is like a simplified version of it, because basically you do one of two things in this game. You're either putting a skull down in your little stack of one or more, or you're not.
Yeah.
And you have to time it, because in order to win the game, you're going to have to win the bids twice, actually, because you have to do it twice. But you have to win at some point. So you can put a skull down every time, which I did for an extended period.
Yeah.
But you can't win that way. All you can do is potentially make other people lose tiles. But maybe not, because they might start to cotton on. You put a skull down. And that's kind of that's how it plays out, because they're like, oh, well, Dave puts a skull down every time. But it's like, well, no, I don't. Not every time. Because at some point, you have to put the flowers down and win the bid.
Yeah.
And you have to time that.
It did feel like when I was playing it, I felt like there was a weird rhythm to the game.
Yeah.
Like where you were sort of going, right, you were finding your moment to kind of do it, and it did. I think everybody kind of had their own little way of dealing with that.
Not for me, because I lost my skull pretty much straight away. I was just sitting with flowers in my hand going, well, this is easy for me now.
Well, this is the extra nuance that's in this game, is the fact that you lose one of your tiles, because you could actually play this with just two, like a flower and a skull, and you don't lose any of them. It's the object is just to win the bid. So basically, just to guess what other people have done. But they've added this slightly unusual extra dimension where you have 4 tiles and you lose one of them, and there is the potential to lose. It doesn't really matter if you lose a flower so much, but if you lose the skull, then it's gone. You can't get it back, and you have to try and conceal that from other people. But eventually, if it goes on for long enough, they're going to figure out that probably you don't have the skull left.
Well, I think that's the thing. We had a situation then near the end, once it got to a point where it's like you knew what everybody had. Yeah, it was just an idea, like just in terms of like, oh, who's got a skull left? Who's gonna be able to knacker me on this on the next bid?
Yeah, but it's the kind of there's mind games you can play around that where you can trick people into thinking that you've lost your skull.
Yeah,
and then they'll find out you haven't potentially. So it's the kind of game that you would play more than once, and if you play with the same people, you'd start to build on top of that and have your own sort of little microculture that builds around the game as you play.
Well, that's the thing, like there's a significance to every little kind of, like if you put an extra disc down, people are going to assume that you're stacking it in your favour, so that when you turn it and you make your bid, you're going to have a better chance of making it. So they're more likely to put a skull down, or they're more likely to try and trump your bid so that they can get in a chance. If there's a load of discs on the table and someone makes a bid for 2, you're not going to let them get away with that, because the likelihood is they're going to win.
But loads of times I put my skull down and then put a flower on top of it. It didn't actually that never actually sort of worked out for me, but I did try that lots of times in the hope that somebody would see I'd put 2 down and think that, right, he's put his 2 flowers down.
Yeah. Well, the disadvantage with that is, so the way that it works once you start, so you turn over your own discs, but you can turn over other discs in any order you like. Yeah. So you there's a tension in that as well, where you're going, right, which one do I go to next? Because you've got no idea, particularly at the start of the game, where you're going to do, and that gets really tense.
Can we also say the art on these cards on these tiles is really nice. The skulls in particular, they're very elaborate. There's something very Aztec Incan sort of style artwork on a lot of the skulls, isn't it? Yeah,
I think that was kind of what it was based on, because the one on the front covers the kind of like one of those with the sugar skull thing.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was looking for.
But each one had, like I had the green one, and the flower on it was a thistle. And I looked at the skull on it, and it was very obviously like a Celtic design on the skull and everything like that. So they did seem to be based on like civilizations or whatever. But I mean, the design alone has me kind of wanting to get a copy of it. Just it's a fun game to have anyway. Just as a kind of, again, like Evil Overlord, a bit of a palate cleanser. between
definitely.
heavier games.
It's the kind of games that I really need to get more of. I've got too many meaty games and not enough of these sort of lighter games that are just good filler, I think.
Yeah, you could play this with anyone as well.
Yeah. Let's be honest, you could play this with anything as well.
Well, so we did discuss that. So you could just have different coloured
play with a
posters
deck
and
of
play the
cards.
same game, really.
So,
but they're nice designs. They're nice to look at, and it just adds a little bit of extra fun.
The thing is that I think they have to make the artwork in this game particularly special in order to make people buy it, because you can play it with anything. You don't really need to buy this game.
Justify.
You can play it with just bits and bobs that you have lying about, as long as it's just bits of cards or something like that. So the artwork has to be nice, and it is nice. So and that's the reason why you would buy it, and it's because it looks pretty.
Yeah.
So yes, that's Skull. That came out 2011, designed by Hervé Marley. Right, Dave. It's time for you to talk about Rhino Hero.
Rhino Hero. Super Battle. Yeah, this was the game of the evening, obviously.
It definitely took up most of our time.
It was the meatiest game, certainly, that we played.
All the other games were just pretenders compared to this mighty affair. Yeah, we've mentioned Rhino Hero a few times. I first encountered it when we went to Tabletop Scotland last year in the Haba Family Zone. Everybody was happily playing away Rhino Hero, and I lamented at the time that I did not get the opportunity to play it. However, that has been rectified since. I got the Rhino Hero, or Super Rhino, the sort of regular game for Christmas, and I played a bit of that, and then we had a shot of Rhino Hero Super Battle, which is a sort of larger format version of it. It's just physically bigger,
right?
I would say. The regular Super Rhino comes in a sort of small box, and you build a tall Jenga-like tower, almost very tall and slim, whereas this one spreads out a little bit because there's larger horizontal floors, and so it can go sideways as well as up, I would say. And I mean, I don't go into extended detail about how you play this game. Basically, you take turns placing a couple of vertical supports, or maybe just one vertical support, and then a horizontal floor, and then potentially you might have to hang a monkey on it. There's like little cardboard monkeys that you have to hang, and then you roll the die to see if your particular superhero of choice ascends the building. There's numbers on that die, and you go up or sometimes down, frustratingly. And then, if you happen to be on the same floor as someone, you have a battle, and that's where the super battle part comes in, which basically involves rolling dice to see who gets the highest number. Possibly not the strongest aspect of this game, but what it does mean is everybody shuffles about. That's the sort of cool thing about it, is you can't finish on the same floor as anyone else.
Yeah.
If you get knocked down a floor because you lose the battle, and then there's another superhero on that floor, then you have to battle them, and then they might get knocked down a floor and potentially have to battle someone else. That does happen. It's a curious aspect of this particular game. And as you had observed, it's kind of a side affair.
It is. Ultimately, winning the game is completely irrelevant to the game.
It is. You just want to build that tower.
Well, the whole thing. I mean, essentially, it's down to fairly random dice rolls, and So there are rules for winning the game. You have a disc that will tell you if you're. That indicates you're highest. Top of the. Whoever's the highest, basically. And if you're in possession of that disc when the tower inevitably falls down, or if you actually somehow manage to place every single floor, you've won the game. And I think it was saying if you're the one that knocks down the tower and you have the disc, then you lose, and everybody else wins.
But basically, if you knock down the tower, you lose, and that's the game.
Yeah,
because
which I did.
Yes,
it just, literally having the dice thing, and it just gives you something to do.
It does let you move. I think the idea is that you move the little pieces around on the tower, and potentially you might knock the tower down when you're moving the pieces about. So there is an opportunity for that to happen. It's just another way, like the monkeys.
You have the spider monkeys.
Yeah.
That you have to. so if you draw a floor tile that's got spider monkey, or you play you have a choice that you can usually have a hand of 3. If you play one with the spider monkey on, you do have to place one of the spider monkeys on that floor, and they have to hang. They've got these little cardboard things, and they've got a little sort of like almost hooked bit where their hand goes, but it's not quite like snug enough.
Yeah.
So it has to just hang. You have to almost balance it on there. So it takes a bit of finesse getting on. And there's only 4 of them. So once the first 4 are on, the next one you play, you've got to take the lowest one and then place it on that thing. So you're putting yourself in a position where twice you're going to have to touch that tower and risk knocking it down. It's just another thing they throw in just to make you knock the tower down.
It's a lot of fun. People love this game.
Well, we enjoyed it a lot.
I think we did enjoy it. I mean, this is a kid's game.
It is.
It's definitely a kid's game, but it's just... it gets into that aspect of your brain, that childlike aspect of your brain of just building things. That just is really satisfying.
Yeah, it's just fun making new floors, and you can try and make them as precarious as you can if you wish. I mean, I think some people who play this game try to make it really tall, just like almost cooperatively. They just see how tall a structure they can make. But you don't have to play that way. You can just...
Do you really?
When you're placing your floor, you can make it incredibly unstable so that the next person has to cope with that. But they don't have to build on top of what you've built.
Yeah.
But it does get crowded, so there's like... Eventually, when the tiles start running out, the floors, there are more limited... You're limited in your options of where you have to play. So you may be forced to play on one of the more unstable sections of the building. So there's a little bit of potential strategy to it. Especially because in this game, like, in the other one, the turn order can switch round and it can end up that you're forced to play again and stuff like this. Whereas this one, whenever you successfully place a floor, it's the next player who has to deal with what you've left for them. Yeah,
and there were a few fairly cruel placements that we did. I think there was a particularly enjoyable one you did to Kenny, where his piece was at the top.
I think that may be against the rules.
It was because you had to put down 2 walls, and there were the 2 of the large ones, and they're almost like they're on a corner, so you almost like created like a little cage. So you had to reach in to get his guy out.
I did consider at one point just completely enclosing his character, but I think...
I'm pretty sure that's definitely...
that's against the rules. You can't be too unsportsmanlike, I think.
Yeah.
You have to...
Yeah, just play nice, Dave.
Yeah.
Just play nice. Behave yourself.
Well, I think it would be covered by the fact they've got to get their thing out, and you can't... I'm guessing it's like... I've not read the rules, but I think that you can't alter the structure once it's been done.
You're not allowed to make it so that people can't reach things.
I mean, you can be a bit cheeky, but you can't go...
You've just got to try and make it... I mean, if you're trying to make it fall over for the next person, you just have to make it wobbly rather than... rather than anything else. Like, some of the floors require you to place a single wall.
Yeah.
So those, if you put that right at the top of the structure, and maybe put it just a little bit to the side so that it's off centre. I mean, as it happened, Chris breathed on it.
Yeah, no, I knocked it over, but by blowing on it by accident. But because I had to place a couple of walls. I put the walls on, and then I had to place my tile on top of those walls, and it was right at the top of the structure. So I kind of just went, "Okay, breathe in, Chris, and just breathe out and place this." And then when I was breathing out, I just blew on a small section of the thing, and the whole thing just toppled over. The shame. I was expecting a much more dramatic end to it. I was hoping somebody would place something that would just make the whole thing collapse, but instead I just blew on it. But it was quite satisfying because only part of it fell over. Well, that's the end of the game, so it was quite satisfying that we that I got the honour of removing the one support at the bottom of the thing that brought the whole
one
thing
wall
down.
at the bottom that's right in the centre of everything. Like,
Yeah,
take that out.
Euan was like, "No, don't take that one, take that one." I was like, "Alright." Yes, it was very satisfying. A good choice of wall there, Euan. Right. Anyway, that's Rhino Hero Super Battle. And how many other versions of Rhino Hero are there, Dave? Do you know?
Oh, I'm only aware of the two.
There's only two.
It's just sometimes it's called Super Rhino and it's a little bit confusing. I think there are only two.
There's probably like a licensed.
I mean, there may be more, but
Like a Star Wars one.
I was looking
Or
at
Rick and Morty one.
looking up to see what it is called in German, but their version just seems to be called Rhino Hero Super Battle as well. Which I was very disappointed because the German word, as I looked up for Rhino Hero, is Nashornheld, which I think is a much better. Nashorn, which means nose horn.
Nashorn. Is that the German word for
Rhino.
rhino?
Yeah, I assume held means hero.
Ah.
So Nashornheld. Super Schlacht. Schlacht.
Oh, of course.
That's what I'll be referring to.
A pint and a schlacht.
Yeah, I'm looking at the different names in different languages, and obviously I can't speak Korean or anything, but it just seems they're all just variations on Super Rhino. Other than one that Rhino Ercolino. I like that. That's rhyming.
Germans have traditionally been reluctant to export their language when they do that. I mean, you think of all the bands, that sing in ropey English that come out of Germany. Your Scorpions and your Europe and whatnot.
Okay, anyway, let's move on because we've got a couple other things to talk about.
Yeah.
So that is Rhino Hero that came in 2011, which I didn't know. I didn't know it was that old. Designed by Scott Frisco and Steven Strumpf. And that is obviously by Haber. Mm-hmm. Right, the last game that we played last night was another sort of silly little, just kind of a party game, really, called Walk the Plank, which is a game in which you're a bunch of people on a boat, presumably pirates, and there's the boat tile, where everybody puts their meeples, everybody gets 3 meeples each. There are 3 plank sections, and there's the Kraken. And the idea being that you have to try and get everybody else's pieces into the Kraken somehow. And it's a card game. It's a card game where everybody gets the same action cards, essentially. It's like there's 8 or 9, I think, in your hand. And it's a programming game as well. So you have to pick 3 cards out of your hand and put them face down. And you do them from left to right, one after the other. So there is a first player, that player turns over their first card, they do what it says. And these cards are just basically things like, kick the player to your right or whatever, or shove the player to your right. And basically that's just the player physically to the right of you at the table. You take one of their meeples and you push it forward towards the Kraken. But you can only do that if one of your meeples is on the same space as that meeple. So you can push them forward to the Kraken. Like I say, there's 3 plank spaces. But some of the other cards are pretty crazy. So, you've got your push left, push right, you've got shove anyone, but you've got things like retract the plank, which was a very popular choice. You've got extend the plank as well, which was not a popular choice. Nobody wanted to extend the plank. So retracting the plank basically just flipped one of the plank tiles over.
Everyone was pretty focused on just getting folk in the water.
Yeah, I'm totally focused on it. There's one where you just grab somebody and take them with you closer to the Kraken, which I used for a couple of suicide moves just for a laugh. There's a charge. Euan, you were a big fan of this one, I believe.
Yeah. Charged right off the boat.
Charged right off the boat.
The idea with the charge, you're supposed to, if there's people in front of the plank bit in front of you, you move them forward, so you'd be on the bit of the plank and they would move on to the next bit of the plank or into the Kraken's mouth.
You basically just charge into them and shove them into the sea. And you keep playing rounds until there's only one colour of meeple left, and that's the person that wins. This is another sort of filler game.
Yeah.
It took us, we were playing with the full amount of people? Was it 6 people? 5 people? 5 people, I think it was.
Yeah.
And the games took literally 5 minutes, didn't they?
Oh, yeah.
Because and might have just been the play style of all of us there, because we were all just suicidal and crazy.
We were just going
basically
for it.
Everybody just retracted the plank as quickly as possible and booted each other in.
Most of the pieces were in the Kraken's mouth by the end of the first round.
Yeah,
in both
definitely.
games, I think. So it was. Because the thing that seemed to happen quite frequently was like a load of pieces stacked on the plank, and then everybody just drawing the plank back, knocking them on the wall.
That was quite a popular move.
Yeah.
There was one stage where I had one piece on the last bit of the plank, and there was somebody else that had 2 pieces in the last bit of the plank, and it was me to go first. And I was just like, I'm retracting the plank. I'm killing my own piece, but I'm taking 2 of this guy's pieces with me, because why not? I think that's a fair trade.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out for me in the end, because I ended up just throwing all my other pieces into the water by myself, so, oh well.
Well, with it being as a programming game, it's a very light programming game, but it is in that style.
Definitely.
And when you do that kind of thing, there's always you're always going to make stupid moves.
Chaos. Aye,
it's almost designed for you to make stupid moves.
Definitely. There is talk of trying to make some sort of life-size version of this at Tabletop Scotland this year.
That would be...
If they do that, I'm in.
Oh yeah,
I'm in.
Yeah. Somebody's going to get injured, and it's going to be great.
There's
not much else to say about Walk the Plank. That's what the game is.
Covers it.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
What did you make of it, Dave?
To call it a programming game is possibly stretching the...
I mean, yeah, it's basically it's using that mechanic, I suppose.
You turn over your cards
It's not Space
order.
Alert. It's not Robo Rally.
Well, yeah. Well, you play something like Robo Rally, you're programming it with a purpose. I mean, then they're really... Yeah, okay, you're trying to get them off the plank, but I mean... Really, you don't have a... There's no strategy to how you do that much, really.
You just play your cards and hope for the best.
Yeah, you just play the cards as best you can. There's very little strategy.
Especially when you play it with, I think the maximum number of people, it's just going to be even more crazy. You can't really predict what's going to happen with that many people. It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
I think if you're playing it with 3 people, it'll be much easier to predict what somebody's going to do, depending on the position of their meeples. But yeah, with that many people, it's just hope for the best. There we go. But no, it's fun. It's stupid and it's fun. It was a good end to the night. I think it was just something fun to do before we left.
Yeah, it should be called Enter the Kraken though. That's a much better name.
So yes, that's Walk the Plank. Came out 2013. Designed by Shane Steely and Jared Tinney, and it's by Mayday Games. Right, we do have another thing to talk about. That's all the games we played last night at the launch party. But we do have one more thing to talk about. We've got about 10 minutes, but Dave and I went to Red Dice Games last week, or a week and a half ago now, and we played there. We joined in, they have a gaming group there where anybody can just go and join in on a Friday night. It's based in Leith in Edinburgh, so yeah, if you're in the area, feel free to go down on a Friday night. Yeah. But we played New Frontiers while we were there.
Yeah, I don't know, is it called Race for the Galaxy New Frontiers? Or is it just called New Frontiers?
It's called New Frontiers, the Race for the Galaxy board game.
Right. Because that's what it is.
Yeah, because that's what it is.
It's a Race for the Galaxy. Race for the Galaxy game.
We've talked about Roll for the Galaxy.
Yes.
On this podcast, and I think during that we would have referenced Race for the Galaxy while we're doing it, because I don't think we've ever actually talked about Race for the Galaxy properly as a game. So Race for the Galaxy is a card game that came out a while ago now, actually. It's a few years old.
Venerable entry in the classic gaming pantheon.
And it's Race for the Galaxy is just a game about, a card game which it's actually got a bit of depth to it. It's essentially just about, it's kind of like Puerto Rico-ish in the way it's played, almost.
Is it with San Juan?
San Juan, the card game, is very, very similar to it.
Roughly, but I think I always found Race for the Galaxy had a lot more depth to it.
Yeah.
And things you could do with it.
Yeah, it has a sort of simultaneous action selection thing going on with the cards, and then there's a mechanism for creating goods and then turning them into points. And there's a few other bits and pieces that go in and around that. There's
quite a variety of tactics I always found you could
employ. There's a bit of depth to it.
It's a really popular game still,
yeah.
Particularly as a 2-player game, which speaks to the sort of strategic depth that there is in it. People love it as, people who like it really, really, really like it and play it a lot, and so they know all the cards, and so it's a good game, but not very accessible for new players.
No, not at all. There's a lot of nuances to it.
Yep, it's a bit confusing because part of that's because it's a card game and there's weird things in it, you get used to having cubes and whatnot when you're playing games these days, but in Race for the Galaxy, one of the things is when you produce goods, you use a card to indicate.
Yeah.
And that is just difficult for new players, and you combine that with the fact that there's no text in it, really, it's all symbols.
Yeah, that's the confusing bit.
Yeah. I think I'm maybe my opinion's slightly skewed because I'm I think probably I found those difficulties when I first played it. We played it so many times that it just became second nature.
It does become second nature, but the first few times you play it, it can, for people who it's especially for people who don't really play, who haven't played lots and lots of games, say. But there was a time when this was considered let's, you've maybe played Carcassonne or whatever. Let's try Race for the Galaxy. It's really popular, and it's a big difference.
there's a difficulty step there that it's
there's
maybe
stuff
a
like
bit
you
too
do things
much.
in a funny order in the game as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
That took ages. So there is a reason why there's more versions of this.
Aye.
Is what I was kind of getting at.
I mean, the thing is, the Race for the Galaxy has a lot of expansions for it as well, and I don't know if they're still making them. I think they might be, but I'm not sure.
Possible.
I've not got any of the expansions for it. I love Roll for the Galaxy. I actually think the Roll for the Galaxy is the perfect form of Race for the Galaxy, and in the way that I don't think I would play Race for the Galaxy again. I think my choice would be to play Roll for the Galaxy instead.
Sure.
Because I love just rolling piles of dice, basically, and that's what you get in Roll for the Galaxy. But this is New Frontiers, which is the Race for the Galaxy board game. It's much more like Race for the Galaxy than it is Roll for the Galaxy, definitely. It's very, very similar. It is. I mean, it's basically what it says in the tin. They've just taken a lot of the mechanics on Race for the Galaxy and made a sort of board gamey version of it. But there's definitely, again, similarities to Puerto Rico. Definitely in terms of the way that you take your actions. So essentially, what you've got in front of you is a board which has spaces for planets round it. You get these little circular planet discs that go in a big bag. You can draw them out the bag at certain points, and you're colonising these planets. You start off the game with a base planet, which is something you put on your board, and it's got the same things that's in Race for the Galaxy. It's got the old Earth in it. It's got the sort of Alpha Centauri, the Earth's lost colony, all those kind of things. Very like if you've played Race to the Galaxy, you'll recognise all these. And very much like Race for the Galaxy, there are technology things that you can put in. There are planets that you settle, and you're doing this by doing the action selection, which is what I'm saying about Puerto Rico. It uses that Puerto Rico action selection, in which there are a bunch of action tiles on the board, on the table, and you pick one of them. You get a bonus for doing it. Everybody else still gets to do the action associated with that. They are just things like, you can just take money, I believe, which is the classic move that we like to do in Puerto Rico, just to annoy people. They're doing technology, so there's a bunch of technology tiles on the board. This is the confusing part of the game, I think. This is where it's hard to learn this game straight up. You can't just look at this thing and just go, right, I get my head around this. Most people wouldn't anyway. Because there's a lot of technologies on that board. Yeah. Would you agree, Dave?
Yeah, it's a little bit different from Race for the Galaxy, but similar to Roll in that the technologies and the planets are separate things.
Yes.
Because in Race for the Galaxy, being a card game, everything's a freaking card, and it's one of the things. This is more accessible because it's more familiar to people who've played board games, I would say, in that you've got your planets in a bag, they're planets, you settle them, technologies, you buy them, they go on your board. But it is one of the things that when you first play it, there's like a set of whatever, was it for 16 of them sitting out. Yeah. And they're all there, and they all do different things. And it's the same thing. If you've not played the game before, it'll just seem like there's loads of them. They all have different costs, and you kind of have to look at them all. But I mean, lots of games are like that. And one of the big differences with this one, and Roll has this as well, is that what they do is written on them. So the symbols are still there, still uses the same system, the same sort of icons and what have you as the other games, but for the technologies and I think for the planets as well, there's writing on the cards that pretty much explains what they do, and in most cases you don't need to look any further than that. So it's definitely more accessible. But yeah, there's a lot of them there, and it can be a wee bit like, because somebody takes the develop action right at the start of the game, and you're like, well, which of these do I take? But I mean, once you understand how the game works, then that's fine. Then it becomes a bit more clear, and you're more than any of the others, I would say, this is the engine building version of the game. Yeah. Now, all the games have engine building in them to an extent, but the thing with Race for the Galaxy and to an extent Roll for the Galaxy is you don't need to build an engine to win. It's just one of the ways that you can get victory points. This game, it's more amenable because there's no random draw of technologies. They're all sitting out there. You can see them at the start of the game. There's 3, I assume there's one fewer than the number of players, so not everyone can get a technology. So you have that to contend with. A very kind of Euro thing is that, like, oh, if I don't take it, someone else might take the last one. but you can see them all there, and you can build your strategy from that. We played the sort of introductory set of technologies, but I assume there's a mechanism for kind of randomizing.
Yeah, I think there
the
is.
set that are out there.
They're double-sided, some of these
Yeah.
technologies, so you could have different technologies in every game.
Yeah, and so it's one of those games. It's one of those games where at the start you have a wee look at what's there, and then that then affects how you're going to play the game thereon. Right. So in this case, you're just looking at the technology, because there's not going to be any new ones added that you haven't seen. The planets you draw from the bag, that's an element of randomness, but even that you can somewhat control by taking the action that lets you get the get first pick of the planets. Because the way you get the planets, someone takes the explore action, you draw like however many it is. It's more than the number of players, like a couple more than the number of players. But whoever took the action gets first pick.
I don't think it is, Dave. I think it's a set limit. I think it's 7.
Is it always 7?
I think it's always 7 or something like that anyway.
But whoever took the action gets to choose, gets to pick first, and then it goes round in the sort of order. So you are able to affect that to an extent. You can change the turn order. That's one of the actions you can take, is that you can become the first player as well. So this game is way more deterministic than the other two. There's far less. You've got way more control over what goes on in this game, and for that reason, I think it's the easiest one to play.
Possibly, yeah. Because
Roll for the Galaxy is easy to play, but it's slightly fiddly with the dice. It's not that there's anything wrong with it, but it requires a little bit of brain power. Remember, because you roll a load of dice, and there's different ways you can manipulate these dice. So you're like, I can get an extra one here, and if I arrange them this way. So that game is harder when you're tired, because I've played
Alex now.
Yeah, because I remember we played that late after playing another game.
Yeah.
And because I'd played it before, it was fine. But we played with someone who'd never played it before, and it was just like they had no chance, because it was just too much to like take on when you were. Whereas New Frontiers is so recognizable if you've played other games before, and if you played Race for the Galaxy, that if you've played a sort of modern board game, this is the modern board game version of Race for the Galaxy, and I think that's its strength. I would say.
I brought this up when, after we'd played it. I don't think there's a part of me that thinks that this game isn't necessary.
It depends. I mean, there's an argument that what's it doing that Roll for the Galaxy isn't,
or Race for the Galaxy isn't.
Well, Race for the Galaxy is so.
It's not that different.
Oh, to me it is. It's because you draw. It's like so.
Yes, I understand that. Yeah, the cards that you get in your hand determine what you actually get to do. But
and to begin with, that's super tough.
It can be. It can be. I don't know. I mean, I feel like
this game's way more straightforward. Like it was so like. I mean, it's difficult though because I've played it before. Like once I knew what the rules were, which took a while. Like then I was like, all right, well I know what to do now.
Yeah.
Like the yellow planet is the one that gives the yellow ones are the ones that give you more money when you trade them in. That's very familiar, and it's all. And there was someone there who'd never played Race for the Galaxy before, and he was able to pick it up. I mean, obviously he's played board games before, so. It took a little while, but he was able, able to pick it up pretty quickly, and that was despite the fact that we played it, we learned it by playing it, basically. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't this sort of necessarily the easiest way to learn to play a game. I mean, if I hadn't played Race for the Galaxy before, I would have had no chance.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we did just kind of start the game. I don't know. There's a part of me that kind of liked that actually, because. Sometimes we can get a bit too caught up, and I know I'm bad at this, at just trying to sit and explain rules to people before we actually start playing the game. And at some point, I do just say, "Let's just start playing," and we did just start playing that game and just kind of went, "Let's just pick it up as we go." But I think yes, you're right. Knowing Race for the Galaxy, knowing how it works, was definitely an advantage.
Oh, it's the reason you and I had such high scores.
Well, yeah, definitely. Like because I did my usual strategy of just getting all the low goods producing planets, so the low cost goods, but trading them all in for victory points instead of taking the money. Just using my technologies instead to get my money, to generate some sort of income anyway. But you're right. I mean, like I did like the engine building aspect of this game. I think it's stronger than it is in Race for the Galaxy.
It's easier. In Race for the Galaxy, you can't because it's because you draw cards from
Because
the
it's
deck,
random, yeah.
You can't just say, right, I'm going to build an engine. It's not like that. You have to look at the cards you get, and you're like, right,
Yeah.
this is how I'm going to do it.
I always do Race for the Galaxy. There's a lot of like improvisation.
Yes,
It's
making the best of
Yeah.
like making the optimum move from the card draws that you get. Whereas this one, you can I totally decided how I was going to play this game.
Yeah, same.
It was like, well, I know a way to play Race for the Galaxy and Roll for the Galaxy as well. And I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. And then I don't need to really think about it too much. I'm just going to use my sort of known way of generating points in this game. And you're able to do that because you can see all the developments out there.
Yeah.
They've ended the game. So you remember in Race for the Galaxy, Euan, where you get the 6-point development cards, which give you bonus points at the end of the game. Do you remember that?
Well,
So
once
they
they give you
bonus
points for having specific things.
Specific things.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of the end game scoring cards
Yeah.
and the technologies that you would put out on the table. These things are in the
Rolls.
New Frontiers
Yeah.
as well, and Dave had 3 of them by the end of the game. And I had none.
Aye, because in Race for the Galaxy, they're not always the easiest things to implement.
No,
You
they
tend not
were
to
very
get
expensive.
the maximum point value that you want to get out of them.
Yeah, and quite often you might draw them at the start of the game.
Yeah,
and you're
and
like,
you've
well,
got no-
I just have to ignore that.
Yeah,
Because, whereas in Roll in this one, you can see them. They're out there. You can plan for it. So it's easier.
As we say, there are very, very familiar mechanics as in Race for the Galaxy. It's a good translation into a sort of board gamey form. In terms of your settling the settling planets thing was a bit weird. You had a limited space for planets, and when you took a planet out of the bag, you didn't settle it straight away. You put it next to your board, flipped over, and you had to then spend little meeple guys in a certain different, completely separate action to then settle those planets, and it would cost you money or the military thing like they have in Race for the Galaxy as well to then settle them, and only then do you get the benefit of that planet.
Yeah, whereas
That
before
was a weird. That was a newer thing. It's not like that in Race for the Galaxy.
you used to
anyway.
just pay for it.
You paid for it and it was there.
That was it with either or military. Whereas now there's these
There's an extra step.
and an extra unit of
Yeah.
currency basically that you have to you can't buy. You have to accumulate throughout the game. That was slightly unexpected, but I assume it's there for a reason. It didn't. Once we sort of got our heads around it. Because there was, well, I'll tell you what. One thing it did add was, some of the planets had one. You needed one meeple. Some of them you needed 2, and some of them possibly you didn't. I think I had one where you didn't need a meeple at all.
Oh, interesting.
I think.
Was it one of these dead planets?
Yes,
Though? Right,
yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I actually once I understood it, I think I quite liked that I wasn't just using my currency to settle them. I mean, you can go too far with having like umpteen different units of currency in games, and we've definitely played games before where I'm like, this is completely unnecessary. I could just use my money for this. Why does it need to be a separate thing? But I think it was okay in this.
Yeah, I think it worked.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing that we're kind of getting at here is that this is just a meatier version of Race for the Galaxy. It takes longer to play, and if that's what you're into, if you're into meatier games that take a bit longer to play, then you want the New Frontiers as compared to Race for the Galaxy. If you don't own either of them yet and you're thinking about getting one or the other, that's the way I would look at it. Because Race for the Galaxy you can play in 20 minutes to half an hour.
Yeah.
If everybody knows how to play this game, you can play it in 20 minutes. It can be done.
That's always a funny bit about it, because my experience of playing Race and Roll for the Galaxy, both I find this with, is a game where it always ends before I want it to.
Oh yeah,
Not necessarily because I want to win or whatever. I'm always like, I'm doing this thing and I want this to go.
Yeah, see, the thing is, I'm a get. When you play these games with me, if
You
I see
end
an
the game early
opportunity
if
to
you
end
can.
the game and I'm ahead, I'll do it.
Aye,
Like I won't
which is a
drag it
reasonable
out
thing to
anymore.
do.
It's
No,
just-
totally.
But when I play these games, I try and get as early a lead as possible.
Yeah.
I learned that lesson quite quickly.
It's
like get an early lead and then finish the game as fast as possible if you want to win it.
I think it's more just because I enjoy playing them. I just want I want
Yeah.
like
I
I'd like
get
to
that.
I'd like to
I
see
totally
one where
get that.
you maybe expanded rules for how many cards you can have out or something like that. I don't know.
You might.
I always feel, but then again, it's all you're doing is just like prolonging.
You
the
might.
game.
You
It's more
might.
just
You might
experience.
enjoy New Frontiers a bit more than out
Yeah.
of the 3. I mean, it's called Race for the Galaxy for a reason, and it is a race, especially in the original one.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you most people will try and run down the victory
should just play the
chips to prevent.
I want to play them all in an afternoon. Be sick of it, but
Oh yeah, throw them all out.
It's funny, but they're all so similar.
Oh yeah,
And I would say Roll and New Frontiers are super similar. They're like, one of them you roll a lot of dice, and the other one you didn't. And
but
that's
it's kind of weird because it's almost like they're in steps, because Race to the Galaxy is quicker than Roll for the Galaxy, which is quicker than New Frontiers. So I mean, and I think that middle point. I mean, I love the dice in Roll for the Galaxy, and that's the main selling point for me. But I think that middle point, I think Roll for the Galaxy is just the right length. But I do think that it does have a learning curve to it as well. That, like Dave says, it's not that accessible.
Just be a wee bit fiddly.
That's,
like you can, fiddly is the word. Like you can nudge dice and make mistakes. You can't really make mistakes in New Frontiers. Like you could
play it wrong.
I mean, you could pay the wrong amount, or you could do what I do by taking the wrong victory chips, which I consistently.
You're taking the 5s instead of the 1s.
I had at the end of the game I had a 10 in my hand, and I was like, well, I know that's wrong. No point.
Victory would be called into question.
Well, no, I corrected it. I changed it for a 5, but Chris won anyway. But but you can, when you roll the dice, you could definitely mess that up with your manipulation of the. Whereas this one's a wee bit straightforward. But you can take your pick. That's it.
Yep. So they're all there.
Cool.
They're all there, depending on the length of game that you want. I think take your pick out of those 3 games. So yes, that is New Frontiers. That came out 2018, designed by Thomas Lehman. Obviously, he did all the rest of them, and that's Rio Grande.
Good old Rio Grande.
Good old Rio. It's always nice to see them pop up. Okay, well that's the episode run on for a bit longer than we wanted it to, but okay, fair enough. We've talked about quite a lot of stuff there. That's probably more board games than we've ever talked about in one episode, I think. So yes, we'll give out all our contact details. In fact, well, before I do, I will say that I've taken the website offline. The website was basically non-existent anyway, because we had some hosting problems. I put a tweet up about this the other day there. We had some hosting problems about a year and a half ago, where we did have a website with a small amount of content on it, not a lot, but we had some hosting problems and we lost all of that. It just disappeared and I couldn't get it back again, which was kind of annoying. So what I've done is I've been meaning to do this for a long time. It's just been on my list of to-do things, but I've recently moved hosting somewhere else. I've started redesigning the website. I've put a bit of work in it. You guys have seen it, but we still need to put more content into it. But eventually, hopefully, sometime in the next few weeks, the website will relaunch. So it is coming back.
It's looking very pretty. Everyone will enjoy it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm still playing with the colour schemes and stuff, so we'll see how we get on with it. So yes, the website will return at some point in the future. But if you want to contact us, you can do so using our email address, which is firstplayertoken@gmail.com, which is FIRST player token. You can find us on all the social media things: Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube. We have a PSN community. We have a Discord, which is discord.me/firstplayertoken. We are also on Twitch. Everything's FIRST player token, the exceptions being Twitter and Twitch, which are 1ST player token.
Which you should be aware is once player token.
Thank you very much. Kenny last night asked us what our Twitter handle was, and I said 1ST player token, and I looked over my shoulder to see where you were, and you were nowhere near me. I was gutted. I was hoping you would just come over and do your thing, do your once. And also, we are part of the Podnose Network,
the UK's leading entertainment podcast network.
Have you been keeping up, Euan?
I've just been seeing the more recent stuff, because there's a few of the podcasts are kind of slowed down on there. Strange Times would be my recommendation. They're still keeping going with Davy and Dent.
Strong.
Seems to be one of the main content creators down there. And I always recommend the Qualcast, even though I'm pretty sure they're not recording episodes anymore. It is quite amusing.
But there is an archive there.
There's a whole host of episodes.
If you go to podnose.com, you will find there's actually quite a lot of podcasts on there.
Tons of them.
And yeah, there's a lot of episodes on there of all these podcasts. So go and give them all a listen. We're a part of that, and quite happy to be so. Okay, we will be back next week with a video games episode, but until then, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.